Hey guys, what's up? This is a video to give a shout out and a high five and kudos and props and credit to all the design engineers out there who have made some really smart design decisions. Ones that might have cost a little extra money or taken a little extra effort or time or material, but they went through and did it anyway. And I don't know, I feel like perhaps sometimes those guys don't get credit where it's due. And I've recently run into two different things that I found where, I immediately thought, wow, somebody was definitely thinking. Somebody was really thinking about this when they designed this, because it's really brilliant. So that's what this video is going to be about, and I encourage anyone else out there to make a similar video if you find anything where it just, nothing ordinary, something that really stands out as something that you see that someone went way out of their way to make it the way they did, because they were thinking. They wanted a better user experience, they wanted it to be easier to use, they wanted it to be more robust, something big. And I found two things that I thought were really impressive. So first thing, so before we go turn the video off just because you see an Apple logo, because people just have this irrational hate for any Apple product, and I'm sure I'll see the heat in the comments, but this is the router I've been using. It's the last gen Airport Extreme. It's an Apple router. So I guess before I get into this, I'll just give you a really quick rundown on why I have this. People will probably wonder. I used to be an Apple hater, hardcore, and I'm not going to get into why I stopped being an Apple hater, but I had bad luck with routers. I had nearly every brand you can think of. I had D-Link, I had Linksys, I had a couple of the WRT54Gs. I had, I already said D-Link, didn't I? I had Netgear, it was the little white one. I had, and after I went through 3 or 4 in about 3-year period, they would all work fine, and then anywhere from a few months to a year after I got it, they would get to the point where they'd start overheating, they'd start locking up, and I'd have to power cycle them to get them to work again. And then once it got to that point, it's like I had to do it weekly almost to keep them running reliably, and, well, not reliably. And it sucked. So I got online and started Googling, decent router, and then before I really started reading any comments from people, I saw Cisco Small Business. I was like, oh wow, maybe those are like prosumer and they'll be decent and you just pay a little bit more. Well, I bought a router and a switch of the Cisco Small Business, and I work in an enterprise environment where we have, I'm on the same floor as our own data center for my company, and I see Cisco dominates. They have crazy network gear. It's really good. It's really expensive. I mean, most of the switch gear is like 5 figures minimum. It's really expensive stuff, but it's really good stuff. And so I assumed Cisco Small Business, it's probably decent prosumer stuff. No, it was in fact probably the worst network gear I have ever touched in my life. So I think it was maybe after they merged with, or they bought Linksys, and they just, I don't know. I don't even want to try to explain how that might have happened, but we'll just say that it was horrendous. I think I went a month before I started having problems. So anyway, at that point I was really frustrated. I even tried to spend more and still didn't get a good router. I Google searched, best router, and then I came across an article written by a former Google engineer. It's a female engineer, which is awesome. And she just wrote a quick little blog post about her experience with the best router she's ever used, and she said it was the Apple Airport Extreme. And at the time, I didn't even know Apple made routers. They don't advertise them. You've never seen an Apple router commercial, I guarantee it. They don't advertise it on their website much. I mean, if you go to the store section, they'll have it in there somewhere, but they don't ever advertise it at all. So I didn't even know it existed. So anyway, I went out of my way to go to the Apple Store and buy one, because at that point I was just willing to try anything. Well, long story short, it's been many years. Whenever this one came out is roughly when I got it, because this is the one before the current model, whenever that came out. So it's been several years, and I have never had to power cycle it one single time. On top of that, it has lots of cool features, like it's got a guest network, so you can have a second SSID that your guests connect to that has a separate SSID, a separate password, and people that connect to that cannot see your network drives, your NAS, your Samba shares, your wireless printers. They can't see any of that stuff. Well, not wireless printer, but the network shared printers. So it's safer, you know. You can give them your credentials and not worry about them coming into your driveway in the middle of the night and hacking your stuff. So it's got guest network. It's got dual band, and you can choose to have two separate SSIDs, or you can have the same one, which is what they recommend. So devices can choose whichever has a stronger signal, depending on how close you are, because obviously 5 gigahertz higher frequency has worse penetration than lower frequency does. So obviously, if you're in the same room, 5 gigahertz would be faster and better. If you're not, then you're probably better off with the 2.4. But yeah, that's a whole nother thing we can go into, and I'm not really even strong in my RF knowledge. But I decided that it is time to finally upgrade my router, because, and it still works, I'm still going to use it. I'm going to use it to extend my network, because my house isn't necessarily huge. It's just 2 floors, and so some spots don't get that great of coverage. And so I'm going to use this one to extend it, and Apple makes it really easy. There's just a drop-down box, and then you select, I want to extend this network, and you can either extend it wirelessly to wirelessly, or you can run a patch cable from your main router to this secondary router, and then that's the second option, and that would obviously be the better option. But so what I went and bought is, and by the way, before you go running off, I'm an equal opportunity gadget guy. This is obviously a Samsung phone. So yeah, I'm not like an Apple fanboy. I just like gadgets and technology in general. And I bought this because, well, because I was told it's the best. And so far from what I've seen, it's freaking awesome. And if you go read, go find some forum threads about people having problems with routers, and then find one mentioning the airport extremes, and you will just find a thread full of people raving about it, because it's seriously, it just works. You plug it in, set it up, and it is rock solid reliable. So I got the new one. It's obviously it's 802.11ac, so it has a ton of antennas, so it's tall, but it's not the only one. The Google, is it On Call? I can't remember. Whatever the new Google one is shaped like this. And there are a couple other brands, and they're all shaped like this. It's so they have room for all the antenna arrays. This supports the, what is it, the antenna directional beaming or whatever. And actually, I don't think the Google one supports that. I couldn't find anything that said that it did. But anyway, it's got all the antennas, and that's why it's so tall. But it doesn't have nearly this big a footprint. It's like this, you know, but it's really tall. Anyway, the first piece of awesome design engineering that I saw is not the router. It is excellent, but that's not worth, you know, noting and saying, oh, this is some design engineer did his job. No, I mean, it's a great router, and it's not to say there's not other brands that will be equally reliable with better options. This has some flaws, like for example, it only has 3 ports. A 3-port switch built in, as where most routers have a 4-port switch. Not a huge deal, but you got a USB port. But the downside of that, it's only USB 2, but you can plug in a thumb drive or an external hard drive to there if you want to do an automatic NAS. It doesn't have QoS, quality of service, so if you have some really important media streaming stuff you do in your house, and you want to enable QoS for that specific device, you can't do that on this. But it's none of that stuff is stuff that matters to me, because I have a big 36 port. I have a really big switch that I use, so the number of ports on here didn't matter to me. But the awesome design engineering is when I went to upgrade from this to this. I'm not gonna show you this because it's already hooked up, and yeah, you know what it looks like. It looks like this with some wires coming out the back. So if you're not familiar with any other router in the world, you open your browser on a computer that's on your network, and then you hit the IP of your router, which will generally be 192.168. The last 2 digits will be a little different. The last 2 octets, it'll be like 0.1 or 0.101 or 1.0, but whatever. You hit that, and it'll give you a web splash page, and you can actually use a web interface to set all your settings up, and that's pretty much the standard. But Apple does things a little differently with everything. In this case, I like it though, because they assume if you get one of these, you're probably an Apple person, and you already have at least one Apple device, whether that be an iPod Touch, an iPhone, iPad, MacBook, iMac, whatever. As long as you got one of those, you're good to go. So I have my old iPhone here, and I took a screenshot of what was so awesome. So what you have to do to set up or to change settings on an Apple router is to open the Wi-Fi menu on the phone, and then you click on the SSID of the network you want to connect to, your own network. And then when you're looking at the details page, at the very bottom, there'll be a link that says, hey, this is an... Sorry. Okay, I got that. The reason it wouldn't let me change the the lock mode was because I had low power mode enabled, because this is my old phone. I just leave it around for if I need to record video from a second angle or something. So really I just use it as a camera, and I enable low power mode, so it just has crazy, like, it'll have like a 2-week standby time or longer. So yeah, apparently when you have low power mode enabled, it doesn't let you go any longer than 30 seconds. But I got that fixed. I set it to never lock. So here we go. Anyway, you hit manage this network, and it'll ask you for credentials, and then you can log straight into your router. And then from your phone, you can, well, change the settings on your router. Now, I know technically if you have a smartphone, you can just hit the browser and then hit the IP of your router and do it. But this actually has a fat client called Airport Utility. Airport's, obviously what the router's called. So anyway, when you have a new Apple router, you go into the Wi-Fi menu, and at the bottom you'll see like new. You'll see, I think it says like new router. You click on it, and this is the second screen that I saw, and it basically said, "Is this your old router, and are you upgrading to this new router?" And I said, "What? Yes, I am." And as soon as I hit yes, it said, "Would you like to transfer everything over?" And I hit yes, and then this is the screen it went to. And at this point, I realized, holy crap, I need to take a screenshot. This is awesome. So it essentially, while I was seeing this screen, it was copying everything from my old router, which was MAC addresses for static IP addresses. I probably had like 5 or 6 of those set. Had like 10 or more port forwarding rules. I had the guest network. I had the main network. Every single setting you can think of, including username, credentials, the admin account, everything. It transferred it from the old one to the new one. And then after this screen, it went to a new screen that said, ta-da, it's done. You can go ahead and move the cables over to your new router one by one. And then I did that, and then I hit next, and then it said, you can power your old router off. You're done. And that's it. It was literally done. I immediately turned it off. Went and did a speed test, and sure enough, I was getting just under 300 megabit a second, which is what my internet connection is. So that's awesome. I've never seen anything like that. What I normally did, in the past, what I had to do is open Notepad on my desktop computer, and then just start transcribing all the different settings and port forwarding rules and everything by hand. Write it all down into like a text file, and then when I get the new one, log into it, set everything up one by one manually. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily hard, but I took something that could have taken 10 to 15 minutes and turned it into a 30-second process, literally by clicking a button that said okay. Oh, and the one thing it did that I didn't mention before the screen is it asked for the admin credentials for the old router. I typed that in, and then it went into the old router and then just said, hey, give me all your information, and that was it. It was so freaking awesome. And yeah, you got to give credit where it's due. That's pretty awesome. Even if you hate Apple, you have to agree that they do put some thought into their designs. And I know people just can't even fathom some of Apple's design decisions, but there is a lot of thought that goes into a lot of the choices they make. And a lot of times people make these irrational comments about why they think Apple did it, because they're being cheap and they're just trying to fatten their profit margin. And then later you come to find out that, oh, this is why they didn't do it. One example, and since this is kind of an EE channel, hobbyist channel, a lot of people give Apple crap because it's 2015 and most Android phones out there have inductive charging. Well, except for the new Nexus ones that just got announced. Those don't have inductive charging. But do you know why Apple probably hasn't done inductive charging? This is aluminum. It's not RF transparent. So yeah, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be possible to do it through one of your antenna bands on the sides here, but obviously if it's not centered, it's not going to be ideal. And at the same time, that also means that it's not going to be as pretty looking if you have some kind of gaudy window. And that's actually on the new, up at the top on this phone is where they have the NFC coil for doing the Apple Pay stuff, the NFC payment. On the new Nexus 6P phone, if you've seen the commercials for it, and if you watch any sports games, they always do the commercials then. It's got that black window across the top, and underneath it is where they actually have the NFC coil. And so I think that's probably why that's there. Everyone is wondering why they put that ugly little black bar across the top when the back of the phone's aluminum. But that phone doesn't have inductive charging either, and it's aluminum. So, and the Samsung phones do, but if you notice, the back is glass, and glass is transparent for RF. So I think that's probably why Samsung went with such a crappy. I don't know why anyone would go glass at this point, because tons of the Nexus 4 had glass on the back, which I actually have one of those. The the iPhone 4 and 4S had glass on the back, and everyone knows the phones with glass on the back, you have twice as much glass that you can potentially shatter. You're like doubling your chance of shattering some glass by dropping it. And so you think it's stupid, but it makes sense. Samsung has been hurting. A lot of the Chinese companies have been really eating their lunch in the budget phone department, and that's where Samsung made the majority of their money. And so really now the mid and high range is all they have left for making a lot of profit. And so they wanted to go premium. That's what everyone's complaint was about Samsung phones, is that they felt cheap because the back was just plastic and they felt really light. And so they wanted to go premium materials. Well, if they would have gone with aluminum, they wouldn't have been able to do or inductive charging because obviously your magnetic fields aren't going to go through the aluminum on the back, and it's just not going to work, you know? So yeah, I think that's one of those good examples of where people just say that Apple's just trying to fatten their profit margins, but no, they want their phones. Apple doesn't have cheap. Everything they have is a premium model. And that's why everyone also thinks their stuff's overpriced. But if you really go compare it to comparable products, you'll come to find that it's actually not priced too much different than the other stuff. And everything Apple makes is premium. They don't really. The only cheap product they made is with the iPhone 5C, the color plastic one. It didn't even sell well. But Apple dominates the high-end market, and so one of the most important things to them is premium feel, and obviously aluminum and glass has been their thing they've gone with, and it's true, it does feel really high-end compared to some of the other phones, like for example my old Nexus 4. It's not a bad phone. It just feels plasticky and cheap, and technically has glass on the back, but the phone's so light it makes the entire thing feel like it's made out of plastic. But yeah, you pick one of those up and you pick something like this up, and yeah, there's a huge difference in feel, and that feel isn't everything, but I think that would be why they haven't gone with inductive charging, as where companies like Samsung, a lot of the other ones have. But it's one of those where people just have no idea why Apple made the decision, but they just automatically assume it's to fatten their profit margins, and I think that is not even remotely it, because inductive charging requires nothing. It's a tiny little pickup coil and a little voltage regulator, and that's it. There's nothing to it, and there's no reason why Apple couldn't have done it other than the fact that there's basically your phone chassis is a Faraday cage. So yeah, so sorry I'm going on a little aside here. I shouldn't, but people are just so irrationally hateful towards Apple that it's just absurd. And I used to be that way, and that's why anytime I see someone just saying something completely stupid, I make sure I step up and defend them, because it's really not all that bad. Now, if you don't like the products or can't afford it, that's not a problem. Don't buy it. Buy something else. But going and out of your way to comment on every single Apple-related blog post or YouTube video and going into the comments and making stupid comments about Apple, that's just get a life, But so that's number one. That's the first thing I noticed. Apple was smart. Someone at Apple was doing some thinking, and they won. Obviously, we're able to talk the accountants into letting them spend the extra time to code that in there. It's an easy use thing. Hey, old router, new router. You're just what if you're just a soccer mom? You're a widow. You have a couple kids, but you don't have a husband anymore, and you're not very tech inclined. You have an old router, and it's starting to go out, so you want to buy a new router and you want to upgrade it. Well, if they had this, they don't need anyone's help to set it up. You literally just type in the password and it transfers everything over for you. And then it says just, move the cables one by one into the same holes or ports, and then you're done. And that is. Anybody with no technology would be able to upgrade from this router to the new one because of the way Apple designed this. So super awesome. And sorry, I'm really wordy about that, but I really get it. I can really nerd out about this tech stuff. So the other thing is, the other thing is at my garage. So let's go out to the garage, and I'll show you where the other awesome design engineering came to play. Now, this one I've known for a while, but it's the last time I went to change my oil. I was like, this is pretty cool, and I got to make a video about it. But I never did because I didn't think it was worthy of a video. But now that I found a second cool design engineer thing that I had to, give a high five or pat on the back to whoever designed this. Now that I got two things, I thought it was worth making a video for. So anyway, let's go down to the garage and take a look. All right, so you're gonna have to excuse the potato quality audio. I couldn't be bothered to bring my microphone out here, so you're just gonna have to deal with it. But this will be super quick. So this is something I've already known about, so I'm just gonna show you. This is my car, and when I was changing the oil, I found something cool. It was the location of the oil filter. So where would you think the oil filter is located? Got any good guesses? right there. So front right headlight, or front left headlight, sorry. Oil filter. Yeah, so tell me that's not awesome. So when you go to change your oil, you can literally just unscrew it and then leave it there for a couple of minutes and let all the oil drain out of it, and then pop the new one on. It is so freaking easy. And anyone who's changed oil before is very familiar with how they're almost always located in the worst spots. Usually they're at the very back, between the back of the engine block and the firewall, where there's just like just enough room to get your hand up there, and then so you have to bang and bloody your knuckles up to get to the oil filter, and it's just a pain. And it's at an angle to where you're underneath your car and you got your arm up there and you're getting grease and grime all over your arm, and it's just really hard to get a good leverage at any kind of angle. As where on this car, it was just a really smart design decision where they put it right here on the top, and they even got this is a turbo model, so they got a oil cooler that you actually screw it directly into, so it's pretty cool. They have the non-turbo version of this engine they put in other cars, and they don't have the oil cooler. And there's another cool design decision. I don't think we can see it from up here. They put the turbocharger at the bottom of the car, so essentially the exhaust gases come out and then straight into the exhaust turbine. And since the length, well, basically the distance between the exhaust ports on the engine block and the exhaust turbine, basically the exhaust manifold, the distance between the exhaust manifold and the inlet for the exhaust turbine is really short, because they mounted it right at the bottom of the engine. And this is a boxer engine, so it's basically a flat floor, and they have, I believe the exhaust ports are on the bottom of the engine and the intake ports are on the top of the engine, so they come out and go straight into the turbo, which means there's very little turbo lag. It spools very quickly. And to help it spool quicker, they also went with a twin scroll turbo, which also helps a lot. But and another thing about that is that turbos put out a ton of heat, and they get heat soaked. And when they get heat soaked, the heat soaks into the air, and obviously when air heats up, it expands, and then so you have less dense air going into your engine, which means you're going to get less power out of it. So you want the air to be as cool as possible. Well, that's why they got an intercooler. But so yeah, by the way, that's a real functional hood scoop. By the way, I know a lot of cars these days, they're just decorational, but by putting that down there, you're keeping all the heat underneath the car, where it can just, you know, the air from underneath the car will keep it nice and cool. And then on the intake side, which is basically where, actually you can see the intake ductwork, and actually there'll be two more on that side, and there's the basically the little intake that gets cool air from the front, and there's the filter box, and then it goes straight down to the turbo inlet for the intake side, the compressor side. So that's not as big of a deal. A lot of companies, I think, have already done something similar to that. And then with V8 engines and V6 engines, they've been doing something called a hot V, where in the middle of the V of the engine, they put the turbo there, and it's a similar kind of deal where they keep everything separate, but you know, you have the exhaust, a much shorter distance from the exhaust ports to the exhaust turbine on your turbo. But that's cool and all, but this right here, it's incredible. I can change my oil probably in total time, including letting this drip for about 5 to 10 minutes. I'd say the total time to change my oil is probably about 10 to 15 minutes. And the majority of that time is just leaving the car, letting this stupid thing drip out. And same with letting the oil drip out of my oil pan. So yeah, that's awesome. I hope everybody starts doing something like this. That way we can stick it to the man and change the oil ourselves, because yeah, I just don't trust dealerships. I don't trust mechanics. I would rather wrench my car myself. So and it saves a ton of money too. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Those are just two things that I thought were worth mentioning when it comes to design decisions, because obviously they didn't have to do that. They could have done it the old stupid way, where they just you know, put it in the bottom of the oil pan at the back of the car between it and the firewall, and expect you to, you know, bang your knuckles up trying to get that thing out. But nope, they decided to be smart and put it right up at the top and at the front, because here's my front headlight right there. And yeah, pop the hood, pop that right off, and you're good to go. And sorry about the shaky cam. I just couldn't be bothered to get a tripod just to record something quick like this. So yeah, anyway, I will see you in the next video. Bye.